Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Safe Summit podcast. I'm your host, 𝐒𝐚𝐬𝐭 𝐿𝐵, and we are 3 days away for the War Within pre-launch event, and I'm actually really excited because a lot of stuff is coming up, and the story is just seems pretty amazing, and also with the 3 expansion, yeah. Like, hold the horses because I'm coming in. It's gonna be insane. That's also why we are talking to a lot of World of Warcraft players and also the people behind the game, and we really want to push out a lot of content right now. And also tonight's guest is pretty exciting, and I'm excited to announce her in just a bit. So before I'm gonna announce her, we're just gonna talk a bit about, like, once again, who Safe Summit is. And if you can see in here, we are listening to your feedback. We have upgraded our equipment and also gotten some feedback regarding how the setup is, and going forward it's gonna be insane, so just follow us for more. Once again, Safe Summit is the podcast where we take it, we're going a different route actually, so we want to talk about, like, who are the person behind the screen instead of, like, how do you do 2% more damage or something else. Like, we are talking about who are you as a person and how did you end up where you are, and especially this person we're talking to tonight, like, how did she even end up in esports? Yeah, so we're excited to hear her journey. Regarding Safe Summit, we're also talking about your safe place. So for me personally, I've been a gamer all my life, and I always found some comfort in gaming. It has actually always been my safe zone in some sort. I have been in the army, in the police force, and no matter where I was, like, when I turned on the computer, put on the headset, I just relaxed a bit more. And we actually got some stories for tonight as well when we go into the podcast. So that's what we're all about, and just follow us for more because we got a lot more content coming up. Not just gaming, but also sports related, so stay tuned for more. But yeah, like I said, tonight we got an exciting guest. We actually got Hula, the general manager from Radar.io. Welcome, and thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and I'm so excited because Radar.io have been a huge part of every gamer's life, or not every gamer, but every World of Warcraft player's life, like, for the last couple of years, right?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, it should be, right? But my journey with you, besides you being this website where you tracked everything, started when we had our own World of Warcraft tournament, the Dream Mythic Masters
Yes.
in Battle for Azeroth, where we spoke to you. You wanted to help us, like, get some more data we could show on screen and a lot of stuff. And I can see that a lot of stuff has happened since then. Like, you are tracking a lot of stuff in all of these tournaments. So yeah, I'm excited to go a bit deeper into that conversation as well. But before we go, like, before I get too excited about this podcast, like, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Hula Hoops. I'm the general manager at Radar.io, and what that entails is a lot of different things. So I basically oversee. We have different teams, of course, and I oversee all of them. So we have our content team, our social media team, our events team, our community team. I don't have anything to do with our development because that is not something I do. But I let the people with the big brains deal with the software development. But that's kind of my role, at least in Radar.io. I've been playing Warcraft since vanilla, not right at launch, but halfway through. I picked it up. I was in university doing a thesis, and I just needed something to break up the monotony of research and writing and research and writing. So um, I remember I was in a Best Buy and I was walking through and I saw this box of this game, where they have the lines of box games, and I thought, oh, World of Warcraft, this looks kind of fun. So I picked it up, and both the best and the worst decision I've ever made.
Yeah, yeah, because
Best decision,
it's not
but it
like
definitely changed my life.
it's just a game I can put aside, right? It's just so time consuming.
Definitely not. But yeah, so I started playing back then. I was slow. I took a very long time to level my first character.
I
I was
remember
new
the
to
feeling.
MMOs. Yeah, I was new to MMOs. I didn't know anything actually. Um, like all the acronyms that come with an MMO, like LFG, LFW. I didn't know any of this.
No.
FTW, I thought it meant for the week, not for the win. So I needed to learn all of these things. And luckily, actually, when I first started playing, I met a couple of friends who kind of took me under their wing, realizing I was a complete newbie, and taught me all these things, all these little things. And,
Yeah.
when I first started playing, I was on a laptop, like an old laptop. We're talking 20 years ago. And I didn't even have a mouse. I didn't even have a
Really?
trackpad. I had one of those little nubbies.
Oh,
No,
Jesus.
the little nubby. That was my
Yeah.
mouse. So I had to play with a little nubby mouse. So
Oh
when
my
I
God.
first started playing, because the nubby mouse was so horrible, I had to use the arrow keys to move. So I was a legitimate keyboard turner, not just keyboard
Yeah,
and mouse
it
turner,
sounds like
full
it.
on arrow key keyboard turner. Obviously things have changed.
I hope
I
so.
do have a proper setup now that I play with, but yeah, I mean, we're talking 20 years ago, so that was my introduction to Warcraft, my introduction to MMOs.
Yeah, and you're still
I
around and actually have a big
Yes,
part of this industry actually. So
yeah, I kind of crazy how it happened, but here I am.
yeah, and now you're here, and that's also why it's actually exciting to talk to you, because you're one of the people like behind everything. Because people, I don't know how, if they just think, this website, it just gets some data and push it out. So we are excited to hear more about that. But before we talk about that, the first time you and me talked, like the intro talk, we just want to tell you a scary story actually. So we were in this call, and I had some serious questions just to prepare her, and suddenly you just screamed out, and I was like, was that a scary question or what happened? But apparently you live with spiders.
Yeah, I guess so. So I live in the Pacific Northwest. I'm in the Vancouver area in Canada, and we have wolf spiders here, and they are relatively harmless, but they're very big and they're very fast. And I am really scared of spiders. And as we're coming at the end of the summer, this is the time when they start coming inside. And so I remember you and I were on a call, and we've spoken before in the past with Dream Mythic
Yeah.
Masters, but we'd never actually been on a call before. So, getting to know each other a little bit, and suddenly I saw this spider walk into my office, and by walk I mean run. And so you remember it was just hiding in the corner behind some boxes. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll have to deal with it later, right? And by deal with it later, I mean wait for my husband to come home and deal with it, because I am very scared of spiders. Well, yeah. So then we're in the middle of the call, and it runs right at me, out of the corner. And luckily, I'm so glad I was wearing slippers with a hard bottom, because I managed to step on it and squish it. But it was coming right for me, like it was beelining it, and it was fast. And I apologize I must have just destroyed your eardrums, because I know I screamed in absolute terror. And of course, the reason you're bringing this up now is
Yeah.
because, so I guess for all of you viewers out there, as I'm getting set up to join the podcast this morning, turn my lights on, turn my computer on, and if there isn't just another giant wolf spider hanging out on the wall behind my computer.
Yeah.
So I told 𝐿𝐼nrich, okay, I will join the call in a moment. I have something to deal with quickly. And, well, I tried to get it. It fell to the ground. It is currently, as we speak, somewhere behind my computer in all those cables, and I can't find it. And so I'm trying to put on a brave face, but just know I am absolutely terrified right now. I am so scared. I'm waiting for it to just pop out
Yeah.
or crawl over my monitor and run at me. I took my cats and I threw them down there, and they're useless. They did nothing. Yeah. So if I do scream, if I keep looking around, just so everyone knows, I'm on the lookout for a giant spider.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I will be using the new arachnophobia mode in the game.
Yeah.
I'm very, very
Understandable.
grateful that they put that in.
Yeah.
Because as the graphics keep getting better, the spiders keep getting worse. So I'm not opposed. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was a fun one.
Yeah, so just if anyone was curious about like why she's looking all over the place, if she has like 17 monitors now, it's maybe just a spider.
Spider, just a spider.
All right, but once again, Hula, like I said early, I'm excited to have you here. So we always do this run through from the early days, like where did you grow up? How many siblings do you have? Like, what were your dreams and goals and career like as a young girl, teenager?
Yeah, so I grew up, like I said, in the Vancouver area, born and raised. I'm a dual citizen. I'm Canadian and Swiss. My mother was born in Switzerland.
All right.
So I grew up in a relatively European household. And so grew up in the Vancouver area. I have one older sister. She's 2 years older than me. So we grew up pretty close. Like we shared a bedroom for the longest time. Um, and I grew up in the 90s. I am a 90s kid. I was born in
Good
the
time. Good
80s.
time.
I was born in the 80s, so aging myself a little bit here. So I was a 90s kid. And that meant, obviously a very different childhood from what kids know today. Played every sport you can think of. My father was a big athlete. He was actually almost in the NHL. He was owned by
Oh,
the Boston Bruins at one point, and he is 72 and he still plays hockey.
holy.
Um, yes.
That's impressive.
So yes, I find it to be very much so. And my parents' sports were always so big for them. They still go out and play pickleball 3 times a week, in their 70s, and so we grew up playing everything. So I played softball, fast pitch softball. I played floor hockey. I played soccer. I played volleyball, basketball. I did track and field. I tried tennis, didn't like it very much. I did judo. So I did every sport you could think of under the sun. Um, Eventually got to the point where I had to choose between them because we started getting into like the competitive stuff. So I
Yeah.
stuck with fast pitch. And if nowadays when you talk to me, obviously I identify with different things. I identify with my job. I identify with my family. If you had talked to me when I was in my 20s and you said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a pitcher. I'm a softball player. That was who I was.
Yeah.
That was my entire identity. I went to college on a softball scholarship for the first few years down to the States. And, I have a national championship under my belt.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm a national champion for Canada in the U18. I've played for the Swiss national softball team in the European Championship a number of years over the years. Softball has been an absolute massive part of my life. So um, I still, obviously I'm getting older. I can't do what I used to be able to do. I have no cartilage in one knee. The other one's always, I just
yeah.
can't play anymore. But I do play slow pitch. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That's like beer league softball. So I actually just had playoffs this past weekend, so I'm a little sore. But I'm still making sure I still play because
Yeah.
that's always been a really big part of my life. My sister plays as well. We used to play together when we were younger.
Yeah.
She's a phenomenal player. So
Yeah, because
yeah, I was sports. That was what I did.
yeah, because I guess like no matter what, like keeping active in some sort is always healthy, right? And it has to be like a part of your life in some way or capacity. And hopefully you're not too injured, so you can still do something.
Well, I just power through it. But I know this is a topic for later on, but the sports I think are a big reason why I found myself in esports.
Yeah.
I just am naturally competitive, and to the point where my friends don't want to play trivia board games with me because I get too into it. But like I'm very competitive, and I think that's just kind of something that comes from a person who grew up playing every sport at the highest level possible,
Yeah.
where I could when I was capable. And that's just kind of a natural progression, I think, to move on to a new hobby
Yeah.
and look for a competitive element within it.
It's funny that you actually mentioned that because I interviewed Gingy a while ago, and he said the exact same thing. He was so competitive in sports that he went when he transitioned into esports, he just wanted to be the best, and we can see that right now. Like he is one of the best players of all time, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
he's,
So
he's amazing.
yeah, he's pretty good. What about education? Like, you talked a lot about sports. You got a scholarship, which is amazing. But what about education and your route and your overall plans back then?
My plans back then, very different from where I ended up.
Yeah.
In high school, I was going to be a fighter pilot. That was
Nice.
my thing. I was going to be a fighter pilot. My father was a pilot, a commercial pilot, but and my mother was a flight attendant. So I grew up in an airplane family, and always loved planes, flight. I would go to the air show when I could as a kid, and just watching those F-14s and those F-16s just fly
Yeah, yeah,
past just blows my mind. Always thought that was the coolest thing. So that was what I really wanted to do. To the point I was actually looking at when I was finishing up high school. I put out you put out videos as an athlete to solicit scholarships and stuff from
yeah.
schools, and you go down to big tournaments, especially in the States, where the whole point is scouts come and watch. Did a bunch of those. I had a lot of offers. I'm at the point in my life where I can look back and say I was pretty good.
Yeah.
I was a good pitcher. I was a very good pitcher, and of course, pitcher is a pretty important position.
It
So
is, yeah.
I did get a lot of offers from like Division I schools, but education has always been very important to me and my family. And I told my parents from day one, I'm playing softball to go to school. I'm not going to school to play softball. And that was a very important
That's a
distinction
good
for me
point,
in that,
actually. Yeah.
yeah, so the whole point of this, working this hard to get the scholarship was to get to go to a good school and
Mm.
focus on my academics, get a good education, and use that to, go into a career somewhere. And so a lot of these D1 schools that were approaching me, first of all, they weren't in areas I was really super uh excited to go to, like the southern, eastern United States. Um, I'm a Canadian. I don't like the heat. So when it was like places like Virginia and Texas, I was like, maybe not. And so, and then there was a school in New York, actually, a Division II school
Hmm?
that seemed perfect for me. And it was Pace University. They were a fantastic school. I went to do a visit. The school was gorgeous. Met the team, everything like that. And I was like, yes, I want to go to the school. Unfortunately, I was the first Canadian they'd ever recruited, and they didn't realize that I'm not eligible for something called FAFSA, which is government aid. So they were like, and it was a private school, so the tuition was like at that point like $30,000 a year or something.
Wow, Jesus.
And so they were like, we can give you 15,000 a year, and the rest will be covered by FAFSA. I'm like, I'm Canadian. I know your government's not going to pay me to go to one of your schools. Um, and so, the whole point of the scholarship was to be able to not have to pay,
Yeah, exactly.
15 grand US to go to every year to go to school. So that unfortunately fell through. And by the time it fell through, all the other offers had fallen through. So at this
Okay.
point, I've gotten into a bit of a tangent, but at this point I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Like, I mean, obviously I applied to all my local universities. I got in, I had my pick of which I wanted to do. But at this point, I was like, you know what? I'm going to follow through on this dream to be a fighter pilot, and I'm going to enroll in the Royal Military College. So the Royal Military College is basically our version of, I guess I want to say Annapolis or whatever the U.S. has. They have
Yeah.
actually their Air Force one is different, but we just have the one. So it's basically where you go, you get your education, and at the same time you learn how to do a specific job in the military, and then after that you're in the service. And so that was the route I was going to go. My mother was not a fan of this plan to have her youngest daughter run off to the military. And so there was one tournament at the end of the summer before as high school was ending. And a scout was there, and she came and said, I really want you to come play for me. I have a school down in St. Louis. And I was like, oh, okay, I mean, that sounds great. And then it was a commuter school, so they didn't have dorms,
Hmm?
so I would have to get an apartment. And my mother's always been pretty overprotective, so she was like, I don't like the idea of her going down there alone, and living in an apartment, that's so far away. And my sister was playing in the same tournament. My sister is 2 years older than me, and she was in her second year of university at this point, or just starting her second. And the coach went and watched her play, and she's like, we'll take her too.
Oh,
So
really?
we went, yeah. So because my sister was very good,
Yeah.
and so we went down there together, and so we were down there for 2 years. Played ball in
Is
St.
it
Louis for 2 years.
is it pretty common for Canadians to go to the US for school or so?
there's only 2 schools in Canada with a softball team. So one is here, but they only started that program, I want to say, in the last decade. So when I was finishing up, there was only 1 school, and people tried to go there, but they also didn't offer full scholarships.
Yeah, okay.
So typically speaking, most of the players here, if you got to a certain caliber, you all went to the States, because there's so many of them that have big athletic programs and big softball teams. So yeah, we went down there for 2 years, and my fighter pilot dreams kind of went away, and I realized, actually, I want to be a film director. So I ping ponged. So I started
just a
taking
bit.
film and video classes. Yeah, I took film and video classes, and I took editing classes. I loved them.
Yeah.
Just absolutely loved them. They were the greatest part of my schooling down there. And then, when I was finishing up there, I did 2 years down there, and I was like, you know what, I don't want to keep doing the ball at the college level. I just want to finish school. So after 2 years, I was like, okay, I'm going to come back home and finish up at the university here. And so I looked at film school and was like, that's a lot of money. And I thought about it, and I thought about, trying to get the loans for it. But, at that point, especially, it was such a risky thing. It's such a risky career to spend all that money, and then who knows if you make it or not. You have nothing to fall back on at that point. So, I kind of talked myself out of going that route. I went and I was like, I'll just get a degree first, right, and see what goes from there. So I went back to my university, and all throughout this, I've always been a history nerd, and so I was like, I'll go get a history degree. Why not, right? I love history. So I went back to school up here, finished my history degree. I actually did an extra year just to do an honors program so I could write my thesis because, like I said, nerd. And so I finished up, and then when I was in my last year, I was like, okay, what do I do now? And the one thing I learned about a history degree is the thing that it's best at is giving you an opportunity to go get more school. Because there aren't too many jobs that are just screaming, hey, we want a bachelor's in history.
Nah.
I could be like a curator at a museum, or I could become a professor, and I didn't want to become a professor. So at this point, a lot of my friends were they were taking their LSATs, which is the exam you take to get into law school. I took law in high school in grade 12, and I liked it. I thought it was a fun class. I really enjoyed the parallel between law and history. In the sense that the history of at least the Western world is the history, kind of parallels the history of our legal system. And so I kind of always thought that was interesting, in how, as history develops, so do laws, so does legislation, so does government, and that kind of stuff. So I was like, law school could be fun. It could be interesting. So I kind of just on a whim went and took my LSATs, did pretty well, applied for some law schools. I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to law school now. I don't have any lawyers in my family, so there was never this driving urge to become a lawyer. There was never like, I wasn't growing up going, I'm going to be a lawyer, right? No, I wanted to be a fighter pilot.
I
So
think
this was kind of just like...
I think I have a quick question regarding you jumping like back and forth. Do you have a hard time picking a main in World of Warcraft?
Surprisingly not.
No, really?
I do play a lot of alts, and actually coming up for the War Within, I am changing my main. But
that's fair.
I've been a holy paladin for like the better part of 15 years.
Okay.
But I've always played alts. Like every expansion that I play, I start with the paladin, that's my main. Yeah. But I do everything on a bunch of the characters. But War Within, I'm going to be a demon hunter.
Oof, exciting.
I've decided to finally make the swap. It's no longer my alt. I'm going to actually be a main. Surprisingly, I've actually been able to stick to a main. And so I was like, all right, law school. Sure, why not? Did law school, enjoyed it. I like the academic side of it, especially.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, guess I'll go be a lawyer. Because, that's just what you do. You just go be a lawyer on a whim. No, I mean, obviously I put years of work and everything into it. Did the schooling, and then did all the articling. And so I became a lawyer. I practiced for about 7 years. And then I was like, it took me a while to come to the realization. I think I realized pretty early on, but I forced myself. I was in denial for a while, to think, no, I can do this. This is a good career. This is the career I want.
Yeah.
I was like I was lying to myself basically for a few years, telling myself this is what I want. And then I realized this isn't what I want. This is not the career I wanted. This isn't how I always saw things for myself. It's an incredibly stressful career, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Jesus.
Yeah, and so I got to the point where I think it was the end of 2018. I was working on a file. It was a big file. I was representing a client who was selling their business for over $25 million. There were lots of negotiations. It was very stressful. I got sick as well, and ended up in hospital because I was so sick, but I couldn't stop working. I was 2 a.m. Like, I'm in a hospital bed at 2 a.m. on my laptop, emailing with the other side and my client, and I just had like, what am I doing to myself, right? Like, I'm working myself sick, and realized like I can't keep doing this. So I took about 6 months off, kind of like a sabbatical, kind of like figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the 6 months, it was like time to make the decision. Do I go back? Do I go off into the unknown, try something else? And I'm really lucky. I have an incredibly supportive husband who at the time was like, you need to do what makes you happy. I know, like, obviously we went into debt for law school. It's not cheap.
No.
And we, taking further time off, obviously it was going to cost us money. And he said, you need to do what's going to make you happy, what's going to be best for your mental health. And so I said, okay, I'm not going back. I took another 6 months off, and at this point, I just played a lot of Warcraft. I played a lot of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And so 2019 was just like my gaming era. I was hard into dungeons. I was doing everything. And then at the beginning of 2020, I was like, all right, time to get back to work, and decided, all right, let's find an office job somewhere, right? Just something 9 to 5. Just go be a receptionist or something. Just something to get my foot back in the door, and something where when I left the office, the job didn't come with me. I didn't take it home. And so I applied for a bunch of jobs, had some interviews, and I understand the reasoning, but I kept getting people coming back and saying, you're a little overqualified for this position. You were literally a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know. You're welcome. like, you're welcome. You're gonna get this for minimum wage.
Yeah.
But I understand the concern, right? They're like, you're gonna come for a couple of years and you're gonna leave, and I'm like, yeah, that is literally the plan. But so a couple interviews didn't get anything, but then COVID lockdown.
Yeah, exactly.
And so obviously no one's hiring when they're having to lock everything down. So it's like, all right, well, this isn't awesome. Started trying to find some remote work. I did some copywriting, freelance for my brother-in-law. He designs websites freelance, so I did some copywriting for some of his clients, just here and there, that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, I was playing a lot of Warcraft. This is 2020 when I competed in the MDI, and so of course I was, a big follower and user of Raider.io. Followed Raider.io on Twitter, and one day I see a tweet from Raider.io saying they're looking to hire a social media manager.
Oh.
I was like, well, I could probably figure that out, right? I use Twitter. I have some basic, Photoshop experience. I could probably figure it out, right?
I think I'm gonna stop you there before
Sure.
we actually go into Raider.io because.
Oh right, yeah, I'm getting too far.
Because your whole story, that's exactly, this is why we do this podcast, because this is about who you are, and you are so inspiring to listen to, like, just to hear your story, just to hear your elitism when you go into stuff, of course, when you say, yeah, and then I read some more, and then I studied some more, like, not everyone has this passion. What makes you have this passion for just keep improving and evolving and being a better version of yourself? Because that's not everybody, and it's very inspiring just to listen to.
Thank you for that. That means a lot, actually. I think a lot of it comes from my parents. I was raised in a household where we were always encouraged to just keep doing more. Sometimes to a detriment. When I remember growing up, like, school ends at 3. My parents would come get me. They'd have my softball gear in the car. We'd go out to practice. Practice would finish. We'd go get dinner. then I'd go to soccer,
Mm.
then I'd go to piano lessons, then I'd go home, do my homework. Then the next day it's sewing lessons, it's volleyball, right? Like it was just kind of always go, go, go. That was
Yeah.
how it was as a kid. Um, but my parents never made me do anything I didn't want to do.
Okay.
They just gave me the opportunities. And I think that was the big part of it, is that I was always given opportunities. As many as I wanted. If I wanted to try something, my parents were like, sure, try it. See if
Yeah.
you like it. If you like it, we'll look at how to keep it going. If you don't like it, you don't like it. And there'd be some things, like I was a kid, obviously, they'd be like, go try this. I try it. I'm like, I don't like it. And they're like, try it again. They're like, give it a couple months, and then eventually I'm like, I love this, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, the one thing they did force me to do was piano lessons, which at the time I hated. And in hindsight, I am so glad they made me do those piano lessons.
Yeah.
So, like, props to my parents for forcing me to do that, but I'm really glad they made me do the piano lessons.
Yeah, because right
Um,
now I'm really struggling with like how much can I put on my daughter, right? Because
yeah,
she's six
it's
and a
tough.
half, started school. She's going to handball now, maybe some dance lessons later on. But it's also now that they learn and they find everything fun. But I did you ever feel like it's too much?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely got to that point. I mean, that's when I think I was around 11 years old when both softball and soccer started their, we
Oh
call
yeah,
them
yeah,
rep
yeah,
programs, which is like the tier A program or whatever. And that's the one where it's like you travel with your team and stuff. And my parents were like, okay, you have to pick.
mm,
Because we just can't do both. I know girls who tried to do both, and it didn't work.
no,
Um, and so they were like, you have to pick. And so basically, it became a thing where became my main sport. But um, when it was the off season, I was able to pick up other stuff, right? So I was able to play stuff in the winter. I played volleyball. I was able to do stuff like that, and so. But I think, back to your question of where does my passion to keep going
yeah,
come from? I think it is for my parents. They always gave me the opportunities to try more things, to try to keep going, and they always encouraged me. My dad coached me in softball. Even when he wasn't actually my coach, he was my coach. And they always encouraged me to keep going. And sometimes, encouragement meant like, go do this, right? Like sometimes
yeah,
it was go practice. And encourage me to just get off my ass and go practice, right? But it was always in a positive way.
yeah,
I was a pitcher, right? And so that pitchers, you don't just go to the team practice and that's it. You have to constantly work. So in our backyard, and this is what I mean by giving me opportunities. So in our backyard, we have this big stretch of grass at my parents' house. Obviously, I don't live at home anymore. Um,
you
and
never
so there's
know,
a
but
big, yeah, true, big stretch of grass. And my dad actually he put in a rubber, like that's the pitching thing that you stand on, and he set up a net at the end of the grass, and it was the exact same distance, and he had just buckets of balls out there, and every single day, as soon as I get home, before I do my homework, I have to go out there and pitch 2 buckets of balls.
mm,
And that was it. He's like, you get home, you drop your stuff off, you go out there, you pitch 2 buckets of balls, then you can come in, have a snack, watch some TV, then do your homework. And it was kind of like it just became a routine, and it kind of got drilled into me that, you can achieve what you want to, but you have to work for it, first
yeah,
of all, right? And you got to work every day. Like you can't slack off. I mean, I wanted to slack off sometimes. Trust me, I was a kid, right?
yeah,
I was a teenager. But it was just, work hard and you will achieve what you want. And I saw that in myself. I did work hard and I got to achieve great things. Softball gave me opportunities that I couldn't dream of otherwise. I got to travel all throughout Europe, playing with these European teams. If it wasn't for softball, I wouldn't have had those opportunities. I got to live in Italy. I got to live in Austria,
yeah.
playing for teams there
That's
for
that's
like full
amazing.
years. Yeah, I mean, I got to go to Russia, to
Yeah,
play in a tournament, which was an experience, let me tell you. And really, really cool stuff. But
and once again, like that's actually the part that really defines who you are. Like the early years, like the teenage, where you are evolving, and also early 20s, mid 20s, like you're constantly evolving, right? But those experiences stick with you, and
yes,
like you're saying, like the way your parents raised you have such an impact on you, either positive or negative. Like either if you lack something from your parents, it's not like this is gonna be like a like a big deep brain into you right now. But if like for my sake, like I didn't have the best stepfather, so I made it my goal to I would never be a bad stepfather if I ever got to that point, and I'm staying true to that. So everybody wants to know a bit more about Radar and your gaming history. So the last questions I have regarding you is just you said the thing regarding fighter pilot. Um, and that's because that was also my dream back in the day,
Really?
and I was so eager to become a fighter pilot. So as soon as I could sign up, I signed up. I came up, and I failed
Oh
like
no.
miserably because I wasn't prepared. Because I just had this goal. I wanted to become it, and in Denmark you only have like one chance to become a fighter pilot. So I failed, and it was a tough lesson, but it really, to be honest, I was taking life too easy back then, and it really made me like, okay, you need to step it up a bit. So sometimes you really need to take the hard losses. Regarding the fighter pilot, like that's a place where you can't slack your way into, right?
Yes.
And
You don't coast into becoming a fighter pilot by any means.
yeah, and you also said this thing where you said, who are you actually, and what do you want to do? And you were on the hospital, and you were still working, but you didn't really take too much care of yourself because you had to work. Um, but at my company right now, we're having this sentence that we're trying to pitch out. Like we need to dare to make clear choices is the sentence, and I have translated it to dare to say no, because we get bombed every single day regarding, can you do this, instead of, we also need to stop and say no sometimes. And you really need to do that yourself as well. Like, stop and say no. Am I happy right now in my relationship, in my job, or whatever? On my main, should I swap main?
Yes. Swap to a demon hunter. That is a very difficult lesson to learn.
It
One
is.
that took me a long time to learn, and one that I had to learn on my own. You know, as supportive and amazing as my parents have been, that's not a lesson that they can really teach you.
No.
It's something you've learned. What are your own boundaries? And actually, one of a family member on my in-laws side, we just saw them last month, and I hadn't seen some of them since I made this career transition. So I was talking to them about it. And my husband's uncle said something really that has still stuck with me, and it probably will for a long time. And it's that he said it's a wise woman who knows when an omelet is actually scrambled eggs,
Oh yeah,
and that and it's good, right? Because
it is.
it really it shows you that, to me that means that I'm still making eggs, but the type of eggs I'm making are just going to be a little bit different. The
Yeah.
end result's still going to be delicious,
Yeah.
but it's not an omelet anymore. And when
That's
you can come to that realization that it's time to move over to scrambled eggs, then you're just going to be, it's not an easy decision because maybe you really wanted that omelet, right?
yeah.
But it's I think it's a really great analogy and a great
It
metaphor
is.
for these kinds of decisions. And I was actually speaking with a colleague recently who was kind of going through something similar, and the way that I have to look back on it at the time, and I think why I was so hesitant to make that decision and to just change my life essentially, was because it felt like I was giving up. It felt like I was quitting.
Yeah.
And as you can probably glean from my stories about sports and everything growing up, quitting was never an option for
No,
me as a
I
kid,
get
right?
you.
Like I was always encouraged to do more, do the best. Like I say, my parents were very supportive, but they also had very high expectations. I was the one that would come home with 90% on a test, and they'd be like, "Where's the other 10%?" Right? Um, Jokingly, but also not at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, I get you.
Like they were very proud of the 90%, but they're like, why isn't it 100? So that was, and my upbringing, I had that, straight A's, everything like that. And I had the high expectations. And suddenly when I'm in a situation where I'm not as successful, I'm not happy, I'm not achieving what I want to achieve, and my mental health is taking a hit, and and I'm feeling stress that I've never felt before in my life, and I'm not coping with it well. And I stuck with it for too long, I think, because again, I felt like I was quitting, I felt like I was giving up. And I had to change my perspective in that I'm not giving up. I'm showing courage to make the change.
Yeah.
It's not I'm not quitting. I'm being courageous. I'm showing courage to take control of my life and to do what I need to do to be happy and to be successful in life. So that's how I've changed my own perspective on it, and that's how I've gotten to where I am
Mm.
to be what I think is I'm the happiest I've ever been.
I'm glad to hear that because once again, life can turn out like very differently, but it seems like you picked up all the right pieces, and of course you have been through your own stuff and your own traumas and everything to get where you are, but it worked out in the end. But it's not the end right now, of course, but we
Oh
still got
yes, we're still going.
many more years to go. All right. The last question here is we're talking about safe places before, and your safe place growing up, was it on the softball field, or was it reading a book, or was it taking a hike, or
Oh goodness, that's a tough one. I would have said softball field until you said reading a book. I was an avid reader growing up, to the point where in elementary school I was known for being the one in the hallway, nose in a book, and I would run into people because
oh
I wouldn't
really?
stop reading. Yeah, to the point my principal had to call me, and he's like, "You can't keep reading in the hallway. You're running into people." And so I would say, that was, curled up on the couch or in my bed reading was always um, a safe place for me. I think I fell back on reading a lot when I just didn't want to be around people. I had a bad day, someone
Yeah.
teased me at school, that kind of thing. I would always kind of just come home and grab a book because back then we didn't really have the internet to fall back on.
No,
So
no, exactly.
yeah, so that kind of stuff. But other than that, I would say I always felt at my best when I was competing in something,
Yeah.
playing a sport, pushing myself physically, always felt to me like I was in a safe place. And other than that, obviously, like just my home with my family
Yeah.
has always been a safe place for me.
Yeah. That's actually very good to hear because the first name of this brand, Safe Summit, was actually called Family First Always, because family is different from all of us. Family can be your bloodline, it can be your close friends, it can be when I was in the army, it was like my squad. That was like my family. So you having this relationship to a family, it shines through you as well. Like seems like it's also something that you're proud of, and hopefully your husband is part of that as well. So
Yes, he is. Yeah, very, very much so. Actually, my husband and I met playing World of Warcraft.
oh really?
Yes, he's
Ah,
from Florida. I actually married a Florida man.
yeah.
But we met back in the
And you
original
brought him
Wrath
to the
of the
cold
Lich King.
north.
I did. He actually liked it better up here.
Okay.
Yeah, we met in the original Wrath of the Lich King, actually, like 2008, 2009, around there. And it's this is not a new story to anyone. Relationships developing in World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
We
No.
started playing together, got to know each other, and realized, I think there's something here. I flew down to Florida to meet him, and best decision I've ever made. And then the year after that, he moved up here, and he's been here ever since. So he's been in Canada for 14 years now.
Damn.
And we got married in 2017. So we were living together and engaged for a number of years. My sister wanted to get married first, so I had to wait. Uh, and then we moved up north, like northern part of the province,
Yeah.
far enough north that we got a tax break for living there. Let's put it that way. It was very cold, very cold. Um, it was not the nicest place, but we moved up there for my work. I was practicing up there for years,
Yeah. Okay.
and then when we moved back down in 2017, back into the Vancouver area, we got married. So Yeah, no, he's definitely part of my
I-
safe zone.
Is he still gaming as
But,
well?
he played classic, and he played classic TBC, but he didn't continue into Wrath, and so now he's like a variety gamer basically. Like he'll
Okay.
just pick up a game. He might play the new one that just came out, Wukong.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We play League of Legends here and there. He's just like, I think Street Fighter 6 maybe. Like he's just every time I go into his where his computer is, he's either watching a stream or playing some random game. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have any games like WoW that he's like playing on a regular basis, but
No, okay.
he's definitely still a gamer.
Yeah. All right. So, to be honest, I just want to like keep want to talk more about your story, right? but we need to go into what this is really about, because once again, the War Within is launching in a couple of days, and we're excited
Yes.
for it. And I want to hear like the Raid.io plans for everything coming up. So if we take a step back once again and just so you saw that they were looking for a community manager, correct?
Social media manager,
Social media
actually.
manager, yeah.
Yes.
And then you said, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, so I mean that was my thought, right? And I do want to apologize to all social media managers out there. I was very flippant about the position. I thought it would be something super easy. Now that I know more about social media management, I know it's actually a very involved job. So to everyone out there who thinks social media is just like tweeting every now and then,
Yeah,
it's a big job.
it is.
It's a big and important job, especially for a brand. So anyway, so I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. So I applied. And then Jaw, the founder and owner of Radar.io, reached out to me and said, "You're a little overqualified to be a social media manager." And I'm like, I know, I keep hearing this. He's like, but I really want you to work here. He liked my background. He really liked the fact that I've been playing WoW since vanilla, and the fact that I had just recently competed in the MDI because this was right after, I think right after season 4 BFA when I actually
Also,
was
in
like
the
on
end,
broadcast. Yeah, so when I was actually like competing on broadcast, so I was super into the MDI at this point. And obviously, that's been a big part of Radar.io from the beginning. And so he was really keen on that, and he said, "Okay, so he's like, what really interests you in the game?" And I said, "Events, the esports, right? I love the MDI. I've watched the AWC since the beginning, right?
yeah.
I've always been into the competitive side of things. Like when I rated, I always rated at a high level, always CE, up to like top 20. Back when I'm a little washed up now. I won't lie. But I always rated at the highest level I could. I was in the 5 day a week, 5 hours at a time guilds. Rating just constantly. Whenever I did dungeons, I always wanted to try to push as high as I could. I went into the MDI. I did Keystone Masters, and I was really into the competitive aspect of things. So I told him that. I was like, I love events. Like I love tournaments. I love competitions. And so Jaw's like, let's make an events program. And because at the time when I joined, I think it was around October 2020, Radar.io was 3 people, I want to say. It was Jaw and 𝐿𝐸𝐴𝐽, the founders.
Yeah.
It was Vitamin P, who was doing content and articles and player spotlights, and Dratnos, who was doing the weekly reps. That was Radar.io in 2020. And so he's like, let's create an events and like community position. I was like, that sounds awesome. And so we kind of created this position together. And he said, like, let's just try it out. So I started out just like kind of doing hourly contract work, creating events. And, I created like some push week events and some various little things here and there. We worked with the guilds for the Race World First. That was, supporting them and providing logistics, things like Dream Mythic Masters,
Yeah.
and other kind of community events like Keystone Masters, kind of providing support where we could. Obviously, the MDI, hosting the Proving Grounds, that kind of stuff. So that kind of all fell under what was now the events program at Radar.io, and loved it. I was super in love with the job, the work I was doing, and so I was like, I want to do more. So as I mentioned, Vitamin P, VP was doing written content for the site. And I was like, I want to do written content. I like writing. So, I reached out to her and I'm like, hey, how can I get involved? She's like, oh, you want to write an article? I'm like, yeah, I want to write an article. So I just started writing articles. And so, if a topic would come to mind, I would just write an article. She's like, this is awesome. She would edit it. Her editing skills are next level. She can take something that's like a B plus and turn it into gold.
Nice.
It always amazes me. Like I'll give her something. I'm like, I feel like I did a good job of this, and I'm pretty proud of this. And I'll get the edited version back. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so much better. Yeah, she's very, very good. And so I started writing articles, and I started doing that. And at the time, we also at the same time they did hire a social media manager. So obviously we had social media too. So I would start, I did some graphics here and there, right, for some social media, for some of the articles. I just started getting involved where I could. And it may have become a little bit obvious based on the story I've told so far, but I'm a little bit of a type A personality, a little bit. And so I started, as I mentioned, it was a small company, like 4 or 5 people, and there weren't a lot of structures in place, processes. A lot of it was kind of just figuring it out as we go. And I was like, you know what, we could do this better. We could do this better. I think if we organized this, we could, and very since then I kind of started, just suggesting ways that we could improve, ways that we could, expand where we want to, and put processes in place.
Yeah.
And eventually I kind of just started like, I'm like, I didn't want to step on toes, and I was like, just let me take charge of this, right? And so I want to say within about a year, I'm the general manager of the company. And now in 2024, we have over 25 people on staff. So we have
That's
grown
amazing.
quite a bit. We've definitely grown. We hired a couple more people, like while I was still just running the events.
Yeah.
But now we have grown significantly. We have we're still a pretty small dev team, but it's growing. We have our content team, which is kind of the bulk of that number of staff, or people who are on the content team doing the weekly route. Is Bunton. We have VP, who's now our content manager, so she's in charge of all of our content. And we have a number of people that work under her. Kat, who's fantastic. 𝐒𝐚𝐬𝐭, who does a lot of our analytical work and a lot of our coverage. We have our Race to First coverage team, because our Race to World First coverage is something we are very proud of.
Yeah.
And we work really hard at that, and so we have a whole team that works on that. Pico is our events and community manager, and so now she runs the events program, and does a lot of our community outreach, and kind of keeps our events going, and the events that we partner with. So a lot of that work that she does is helping those community programs and tournaments, and what we do, we support them with a lot of logistics, like we have like event hubs, registration, information, data collection, that kind of stuff, and widgets for streams and broadcasts. So things like the Dungeon Dojo Invitational, we do a lot of work on that. Keystone Masters, including their PvP tournaments, Eve Ascension, Keystone Builders, various tournaments like that we work a lot on.
Yeah.
We have our social media manager, 𝐒𝐚𝐿, and our social media team and our graphics team, and now we're doing a lot of video content as well.
Yeah, it seems like you have been through an amazing process from going from 3 guys, not guys, but 3 people, and now you're here. But and it seems like there's still lots of stuff happening, like constantly. And I remember when we did the second season of our tournament, Jar said to me, if you want to do something really exciting, you should try and do a tournament where you try to get people to push a key as high as they could. And we we didn't really have the manpower of it, and also Corona was at its highest, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and also in my company as well. So we didn't really pick up on that, and that became the great push. And I guess you have also have a lot of stuff going on with all of the small events leading up to that.
Yeah, so the Great Push, became a one-off tournament. That's what they originally called it. So it was just like a one weekend.
Yeah.
And then they kind of did it as a test, and it obviously was very popular. And Keystone Masters as well. They were doing their kind of FX tournaments where they were trying different things.
Yeah.
And I know the esports team was really interested to see how those did and um, what kind of viewership it got, but also what kind of participation levels it got. And so, I know that at that point in time, there was a lot of experimenting, trying new things. Like how can we take the MDI and build on it? So, from the early days of the TGP, we were a part of it, and we hosted the Proving Grounds, the time trials for both TGP and MDI. And we were able to share, data on how many dungeons are coming through, and it was a lot. And it seemed like it was a really popular thing. So we obviously we've partnered with Blizzard for all of the MDIs and TGPs, and at the end of last year, actually, we became the official tournament platform for all of World of Warcraft esports,
Oh my God, that's insane.
which is an incredible achievement that we are
It is.
very, very proud of. They were using game battles, and that ended up, I think, maybe getting shut down. I'm not sure, but they needed something else. And so game battles, I think they were using for like all of Blizzard esports, but the WoW esports team specifically, Warcraft is such a unique game, especially when it comes to esports. It's not like, MMOs aren't your standard esports type games. So there's lots of different unique considerations for esports within World of Warcraft.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they wanted a tournament platform that was really tailored to their needs. And they came to us, and the talks had been there for a while, and they were like, this is what we want from a tournament platform. Can you make this happen? And Jaw from the get-go was like, absolutely, we can make this work. We can make this happen. So the platform as it is now, like obviously we are still improving and working and trying to make this the best tournament platform for players. We want them to have a great experience with it. So obviously, if there's ever any feedback, go to the MDI or the AWC Discords and let us know.
Yeah.
But that was our goal, was to we worked with them from the start, and we created from scratch this tournament platform that basically will suit all the needs for the WoW esports team. So now, not just MDI and TGP, but also AWC, the Arena World
Oh,
Championship
so
is
you're
now
going
hosted.
into that as well?
Yes, so
Oh,
starting
that's
from
gonna
last
be amazing.
December,
Like to have one place where everything is, that's just the best instead of looking up
it's
at
all there.
7 websites. Jesus Christ.
Yes. And the best part is, so we expanded, so prior to this, so that was last December was the first AWC we hosted. Prior to that, we typically didn't even expose any PvP API. So any PvP data in the game, we didn't bother even looking at it. So that's something we had to change, obviously. So we need to start collecting scores. We need to start collecting all this stuff. Just battleground data, or arena data, that kind of stuff. And so we started taking that API, we started developing all that stuff, and we actually we didn't want to just be the place where you register, but also where you submit your scores. So AWC, the proving grounds, I guess, for AWC is actually just an open bracket. So anyone signs up, and then you basically check in on bracket day, and you get sorted. And like, okay, here's the bracket, and then it's kind of in the player's hands to go play out the bracket, and then they report their scores. So we developed a system on the site that I think is really intuitive, and the players have given really good feedback that this is a very easy way for them to report their
Hmm.
scores. So they actually go to the website, they just have it open basically on their
Yeah.
other monitor, and once the game is over, they're like, all right, we won 3-1. The other team reports the same thing, and once the system goes okay, both teams are saying the same thing, it moves the bracket onwards. So it just kind of, it's automated in that sense. So the bracket flows nicely, and then once it's on broadcast, we have the broadcast bracket, and we have all the information. So if you actually go to an AWC bracket on Radar.io, you click on it, you will get all the play information. You'll see what class they played, you'll see their spec, you'll see their talents, you'll see their gear. So everything that they picked on the tournament realm, you'll see what they were playing
That's
with,
amazing.
and it's a time-stamped VOD to that exact matchup. So you want to see just Team Liquid versus oh god, no, I'm forgetting all the team names. Shibaku Tensai or something. That's what you want to watch. You want to watch them play together. You want to watch their third matchup, which was in like Black Rock Hold or something. You
Yeah.
can click on it, timestamped VOD right there. And the brackets are all there for the historical data. We also developed an insights and standings page, so now you can go see, and it will give you a breakdown of like the most popular group comps for Arena and MDI. So it's for both esports now. So we're really trying and continuing to innovate on what we're providing for both players and viewers of the World of Warcraft esports. And we're really, really happy to be a part of that program,
Yeah.
because esports are awesome.
All of this, like I said earlier, is very inspiring to hear you talk about. What would you say, like a person with your background is like so qualified for especially this job? What would you say is like core values you must have to be successful as a general manager?
As a general manager, you got to be a people person. The bulk of my work is honestly just talking to my staff, and knowing when and how to delegate. And it's things that kind of are similar to being a coach.
Yeah.
I liken it a lot to coaching, and I think I've been lucky enough to receive feedback from my staff that they really like me as a manager. And it's actually, I was a raid leader too and a guild leader, and I've always kind of taken the same approach to leading as I used to when I coached softball. And from my own coaches, in that I am a huge proponent of positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
If someone on my staff does a good job, I tell them about it. I tell them they did a good job. I call them out. I in one-on-one and also in front of their peers. I think it's really important to recognize achievements and hard work.
It is.
And it's because people these days, everyone has imposter syndrome to some extent, right? Especially in a job like ours. Like our entire company is remote, so everyone works from home. We all make our own hours. So not only do you have to be a people person, you also have to be very self-motivated, because there's no one checking in on me. There's no one making sure I'm working, right? Like, how many hours I work, and which on the other side means I usually work more hours than I probably should, because I like the job, right? I like the work.
Exactly.
So I often find myself, if I'm bored, instead of like playing a game or watching TV or going out or something, I'm like, I'll get some work done, right? That's, yeah, my husband calls me a workaholic, but that's another thing. But it is mostly just knowing how to manage people, understanding that every person needs to be managed differently. And I know saying I need to manage this person, it sounds so negative, like, oh, I have to manage her, right? And it's not. It's just being able to lead that person
Exactly.
and give them what they need to be successful in their role. I've got some staff that do need, pretty consistent positive reinforcement. They do need to check in regularly. And so I make myself available for that. I've got others that I just say, this is what I need you to do, and this is the day I want it done. And they're like, I got you. And they get it done. And I don't need to micromanage. I don't need to be super heavy-handed. I'll check in here and there. But when I check in with my staff on their current tasks, it's not, hey, can I have an update? It's, hey, what do you need? What do you need right now from me to make this work? And so I think it's really important, to in a role, especially where you're leading other people, where you're a team leader, where you're a manager, is to not see yourself in a hierarchy. It's to see yourself as, you are there. Your job is to help them do their jobs. Right?
Yeah.
That's my job, is to help everyone else be successful. Whether that's, dealing with interpersonal issues, right? Helping with scheduling stuff, getting them assets, getting them access to software, getting them, liaising with our development team, because the devs speak a different language, right? They speak dev, and sometimes coordinating development requests with the events team and the content team, that can be tough. We all get along very well. Our Discord is very open and collegial, so everyone feels free to ping other people, but quite often I'll just DM someone and be like, hey, we need an answer to this. Can you get to that right away?
And to be honest, I have also worked as a leader for like 15, 20 years now. And all the values that you're saying right now is, I think that we are in some way aligned in how we actually lead our people, because you listen to each person and then you lead from there. Like if it gets really rough, people just need to get in line, but that's not the
Yeah.
reality where we are now. Like we are not in a war or anything where people just need to
Yeah.
fall in, right? But yeah, when you're getting close to a deadline, like we get the race world first coming up, and sometimes shit just needs to be done, and maybe
Yes.
you need to to change like your tone or something just to get people
Yes.
in. But I really love what you just said before, where you said you were you were a raid leader, and your people skills and your managing skills, you also, or maybe it already started there, because I remember like back in the day when I told my stepmom about about me being a raid leader for 25 people, and I was actually proud of it because we killed, I can't remember what we killed, like some boss, and and she was like, "So you're playing a video game with a lot of people, so what?" Like, but it's
Yeah.
not so
Parents
what.
never understand.
It's not so what. Like we managed as a group by my
Yeah.
leadership and people in individually to actually kill this, but because so much is taken into being a good raid leader and also a good guild leader, and I have experienced countless bad raid leaders, good raid leaders. Like
Yeah.
I still like remember a guy calling out like, "You do not talk in my raid. You do not laugh in my raid." Like, and I was like,
Oh no.
"This
This
is a
is
game.
supposed
We
to be
need to have
fun.
fun, man."
Yeah.
But he was the worst player. Like, why are you
Of
talking like
course.
this? Jesus
Of
Christ!
course. I
Yeah,
always made a point when I was raid leading. If I saw someone do something good, like in the middle of a pull, I would say it right then and there.
mm,
Um, and I always think that was really important. And I still do it. Like even if I'm not raid leading, if I'm in a raid and someone, does a really clutch ice block, I'll say it out loud in comms. I'm
yeah,
like, nice ice block. Like that was great.
yeah.
And
Exactly.
you can tell when the person responds. You can hear the smile,
Yeah,
right? You can hear that just that recognition. Because as a raid leader, as a leader, you always expect the best from the people under you.
yeah,
But sometimes it's just worth letting them know that you see that they're doing their best. You see it, you recognize it, and and you appreciate it.
yeah,
I think that's the other thing is you have to show appreciation for
yeah,
the people that you work with, especially when our at Radar IO, like I said, we all get along. We're all friends. We are definitely friends. Um, so one thing I do constantly have to work on and be aware of is making oh, so, okay, no, we're good. No spider. All right. I thought I saw something. I thought I saw something. Um, sorry, I have chills now. We're good. But one thing that I always have to be aware of is where to make sure I establish those boundaries between like I'm your friend, I'm also your boss, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so sometimes I think they get a little blurred. But I do like to think that I do a good job. It's something I'm just constantly kind of consciously aware of at all
yeah,
times. And I think if ever anyone finds themselves in that situation, the best way to establish that boundary is to not is I don't like confrontation. No one does, but don't be afraid to tell someone when they haven't done the job you need from them.
yeah, yeah.
If you're
Exactly.
just if someone's done something and they've disappointed you, if they've made a mistake, you need to be able to call them out. Don't be afraid to do your own job of leading them, just because they're also your friend.
Yeah,
So and the relationship will survive it, right? As long as that person is relatively emotionally mature,
yeah,
your relationship will survive it. So I have like people on our staff who I consider my best, some of my best friends, and I talk to all the time, and I adore them. But if they do a poor job, which happens so rarely,
yeah.
I'm very happy to say that everyone at Radar.io just is fantastic at their work, at their
I'm
job.
glad to hear that.
I'm so lucky to have a staff that loves their job and does it super super well. I very like this is the whole like, oh, you you made a mistake here or you need to do better here. That is something that happens so infrequently for me that I'm so happy about that. But when it does happen, you can't be scared to say it, but you just need to say it in a respectful manner.
Yeah.
You say, this is what I needed from you, and your work fell short. So let's figure out why and how we can make sure this doesn't happen in the future.
All right.
And work together, right? Work together to
Yeah,
make sure that
exactly.
doesn't happen in the future. So
Yeah, and that's easier when you have a good manager leading everything. So it's always easier if a manager open to cooperation and just a good talk, right?
and I don't expect them to be like me,
No.
right? Like I'm not forcing them to fit into the hula mold. I want them to work their best way. And,
Exactly.
and that's the thing. I have to recognize that every single person is going to work differently.
Yeah.
And not force them to all, fit into a mold and be a carbon copy.
No.
Because no, we don't need any more hulas. One's enough. I'm neurotic enough as is.
Jesus. All right. So, I think you have some very good points regarding like how to manage a team and also like with your mindset from the early days, like coming into this position. So I think it seems like you are a good strong choice, and Radar.io is in very good hands. So I'm excited to see what's coming up. Before we go into our small semi break and going into the War Within talk, and also a bit about you and your World of Warcraft career. Can you give us a 2-minute recap on what is Raid.io? How did it start? I know 2 minutes might be a short time, but just
I'll try.
let's try it.
Radar.io started in 2017.
Yep.
It was founded by 𝐏𝐸 and his partner 𝐒𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐜. And precursor to that was a website called 𝐿_Jitsu. I don't know if anyone out there remembers that, but 𝐿_Jitsu was one of the first guild progression tracking websites. And so it was pretty bare bones. And so 𝐿_Jitsu was running 𝐿_Jitsu. At the time, he was a software developer at id Software. And he worked on some pretty big name games. I don't know if you've heard of Doom and Quake and
Yeah, I did.
so, he's been making games for many years in the industry. And so he was at id Software, one of the lead devs there, and he had 𝐿_Jitsu, and it was a bit of a conflict, so he had to shut down 𝐿_Jitsu. He moved on from id Software, and he now is at another company where he's the chief technology officer and owner of that company. And so he was like, okay, I have the freedom now to pursue what is in reality my passion, which is Radar.io.
Yeah.
So in 2017, he and 𝐒𝐨𝐽, recreated 𝐿_Jitsu into a new venture, which is Radar.io. And the idea at the very beginning was for it to be a recruitment site. They have been in guilds, I think the same guild, I want to say, for over 15 years. But they've done the recruitment, they've done all that, and they realized that all of the recruitment services out there was, all of them had great things about them, but none of them were complete, right? All of them had something lacking. So they wanted to create a site that was recruitment in the way that they think it should be done. But they also realized that they can't just create a recruitment site. They have to create something that people were going to want to go to anyways, and then the recruitment just be a part of it. So this was around Legion when Mythic Plus first came out. And they were like, how about we keep track of Mythic Plus, this new game mode that everyone seems really interested in? And they started keeping track of the dungeons. They were like, this should have a score, right? Because you keep pushing things higher, it feels right that there should be some kind of, qualitative way to track how you're doing and your success. So 𝐿_Jitsu implemented the very first, I think WoW Progress had some kind of score attached to Mythic Dungeons at the time, but it wasn't great.
No.
The way it was done. So 𝐿_Jitsu was like, this can be done a lot better. So he developed Radar.io score. And the rest is kind of history, right? So Radar.io started tracking scores, and from then started tracking character profiles, guild profiles, raid progression. Everything that you could track progression-wise and score-wise, you could find on Radar.io. And then we got involved at the very first MDI, right? The Proving Grounds were hosted on Radar.io. We have the original brackets from the 2017 when it was the Mythic Dungeon Invitational, right before it was the International. All the brackets are there still on Radar.io. So we started getting involved in that, and then that kind of status quo and kind of just continuing to build the site, create great features for the site. The in-game add-on, obviously, that came shortly after, to be able to coordinate what's being tracked on the site with your in-game experience. And then 2020 is kind of the beginning of where we expanded to, okay, let's do more. Let's do content. Let's do videos. Let's do events. Let's do all that stuff. Let's really put ourselves out there into the community and become a part of this community and see what we can do to improve the player experience in every way possible. That's Radar.io.
That's such a good take on follow your passion and your dream and seeing something that's needed and just going with it. It almost sounds like a light version of Facebook.
Kind of, yeah.
but yeah, because Radar.io is such a big part of every player's life when they are actually doing endgame content, at least. So that's I really like this story and how it's turning out and also what's actually coming up. Like you said, you constantly have devs working on improving things and also in other directions. You also talked about both classic, both kata and SOT as well. And I really like that you can track stuff, to both see your rankings but also see what other players are playing as, and that's really fun to see. Am I playing something different? Can I be the highest rated in this spec or something? So very good job for keeping this up. And when we're closing out, we are talking about the future of Radar.io. So let's do a short quiz break before we enter the War Within thing. So what I want to do, just to relax our brains a bit, because it's I didn't really imagine us to talk this long about these subjects, but these topics, because it's just so interesting. So again,
I have a tendency to be a little verbose. I should have told you that ahead of time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but once
I'm
again,
a talker.
it's also exciting. So that's fine. And once again, like this, you aren't like a raider in Echo or Liquid or Method or anything. But we have so much more to talk about, and I'm excited to the War Within talk. But let's start with the first relaxed, not. I wouldn't say it's a quiz, but I want to hear your point on if you should name your top 3 favorite expansions from Classic and all the way up till where we are now. And once again, it can either be because you love the gameplay, you love the guild community you were in, or maybe the raids or whatever. It's all up to you. So let me hear your top 3.
Legion.
Sorry.
You know what? I'm gonna tie Legion and Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah.
As number 1. Legion would have been an absolute number 1, no tie whatsoever, if I forget what patch it was, but when you could start targeting your legendaries.
Oh yeah.
If that was in at the beginning of the expansion,
exactly,
Legion would be hands down the best expansion they've ever created. But I still think it's one of the best. So Legion, Wrath of the Lich King. And the next one might surprise you. Warlords.
I'm so glad that you said that, because Warlords is such an underestimated expansion. I know people hate some of the daily stuff, but like the raids...
The raids were amazing.
They were.
And the way the classes played... I was playing... Like I said, I've mained a Holy Paladin for the longest time, but I always played alts. And WoD, I leveled 2 more hunters just so I could do 3 mythic raid groups as a hunter because marksmanship was so fun
It
in
was.
what in HFC specifically.
Yes.
The for the 4-piece bonus with aim shot being
Yes,
instant,
instantly.
and
Oh my god, I love that.
it was just the best iteration I think of marksmanship hunter in the game,
Yeah.
and I had so much fun with it that like I started raiding. I was like, oh, just as an alt, I was like, this is so fun. I was like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go level another hunter,
Yeah.
and so HFC I think especially was um a really fun raid. But the raids in WoD were fantastic. A
They
lot
were.
of the classes played really well. Some had their the Holy Paladin, the kit itself wasn't the greatest. You needed the trinket, the class trinket,
Yeah.
to be competitive. But once you had the class trinket, you were golden, right? It
Exactly.
design wise, it never felt great that like the class was flawed to the point where you needed to fix it with this trinket, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
And once you had it, it played fine. But yeah, WoD is my third. So yeah, Legion, Wrath, Lich King, Wrath mostly for the nostalgia.
And your
That was
husband?
and my husband. Yeah. Wrath was the first expansion I played with a competitive raid group.
Hmm?
So I started raiding in TBC. And 𝐒𝐚𝐟𝐞 was like my first raid. When I didn't know what raiding was, I'm like, let's try
Yeah.
raiding,
Let's go
right?
10 man and see
Um,
what this is
yeah,
about.
started doing 𝐒𝐚𝐟𝐞 and started doing Gruul, and if it just joined a random raid group. They were very nice people, but I realized very early on that I'm a lot better than this.
Yeah.
So like I'm new to the game, but I can already figure this out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I was playing a warlock at the time too, and so I was like, I want more, right? And I realized that, so I moved up to another guild.
Yeah.
Started doing tier 5 with them, and then I was like, I want more. So tier 6 had already come out, but I applied to a guild. I was on the Crush Ridge server, US, which is one of the original 6 servers.
Yeah.
It was known as Crash Ridge for good reason. And so I was playing Horde. I applied to the best Horde guild on the server in tier 6.
Of course you
And
did. Once again, like
yes,
your
of course.
elitism, you
Yes,
can't.
yeah, gotta keep going, higher. And so I got in as a Holy Paladin. So because so as I mentioned, I was playing a Warlock forever, and then I tore my ACL playing
Oh.
soccer, and I was bedridden and on crutches and unable to move for a couple months because I tore it. I tore it real bad. I both ends same time, and so I had a lot of time on my hands. Let's put it that way. So I was
Yeah.
like, let's level a paladin, right? So I made a paladin and started playing Holy Paladin. I'm like, this is really fun. So then near the end of TBC, I applied and I got into this guild Rampage. And then Wrath was when I was, that's when I was in my first competitive guild. I have one server first achievement from Wrath on my account, which is Realm First Malagos. So I have
Oh.
the Magic Seeker title.
Yeah.
There was one guild that we were always competing with. They were the Alliance guilds, and the only reason they got all the other ones is because they started their raid an hour earlier
Ah,
than we did,
too
and we
bad.
would always lose it by like 30 minutes. We got Malagos because the lag was so bad they eventually gave up. But we had spies watching the slash who,
Yeah,
their
yeah,
guild, and once
whatever.
they realized that they had quit, they're like, we are here until this dies. Like our guild is like, no one's going to bed. We're here. This is our opportunity to get a server first. We got the kill with one person alive.
Oh,
Um, on our realm first. It was our guild leader. He was on the dragon, and because the lag was so bad, that dragon phase
yeah, yeah.
was near impossible. But we got it. Like I said, I have so much nostalgia for this expansion. I remember those kills, right?
Yeah.
Those exact. And this is what 15 plus years ago. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's a long time ago, and talking about Lich King, like a lot of people came back when classic Lich King was announced. That's also what brought me back to classic as well, like getting the
yeah, for
old
classic
gang
craft.
back together. We're also playing Cats and now and having fun, but I know yeah, I'm excited to see who sticks around for the rest of the classic era. Um, I don't know how far they are gonna take the classic thing, but
I hope they go to at least Legion.
sorry.
I hope they go to Legion.
Yeah, hopefully with the patch with the targeted legendary.
Yes,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah,
The other reason I really want Legion is because, so as I mentioned, I'm going to be maining Demon Hunter in the
yeah,
War Within. I started playing Demon Hunter in BFA, and when I started doing dungeons a lot, I didn't always want to have to heal them. So I'm like, I want to play a DPS. I've always liked melee, and I didn't want to just play Ret. So I really wanted to know, like, I'll try Demon Hunter. I love Demon Hunter. Every single person I know says I missed out on the best iteration of Havoc because that was Legion, and I never got to play it.
yeah,
So I want them to go back to Legion just so I can
yeah.
play
So you can
what
try
was
it.
the original Havoc Demon Hunter,
Yeah,
and kind of experience that. But also because Legion is just a great expansion, so I hope they keep going.
yeah. I really like Legion, like just in general. I liked and I hated the AP farming because I had to re-roll 3 times in phase 1, so that's a lot of farming.
Oh, ouch.
But besides that, yeah, I totally agree with Legion and also Mythic Plus and also the story
Yeah,
and yeah,
that helps too. Yeah, they brought in Dungeons and Mythic Plus at that point.
yeah, exactly. All right, so the last thing is I want you to give me your top 3 endgame bosses, either according to the lore
Ooh,
or maybe the nostalgic of killing this boss particularly, or something else.
ooh, okay. Lich King. I gotta go Lich King.
Yeah,
That's number one. Both reasons, lore and the fight itself.
yeah,
Um, it was the first hard boss in World of Warcraft, in my experience. Um,
yeah. Hard.
obviously, yeah, obviously, like it was the first boss that really required like coordination and mechanics.
Yeah,
Um, and
I think.
like all the other bosses before that were kind of like meh, right? Like in terms of mechanics, like they were fun bosses, but they didn't need you to really be on. And that was kind of, I think, the beginning of that era, which has never ended, which
Mm,
is where mechanics are what win bosses, not just straight up gear and damage.
yeah,
So that's number one for sure.
yeah,
Number two, Argus, I think.
yeah.
That's the last
Argus.
boss in HFC, right?
Yeah. Jeez,
Yeah.
Argus. That was
Argus mostly because that was my first raid that I was a raid leader, and we
okay.
got CE. And so that's something I'm still proud of to this day. Wow, we
Understandable.
took, yeah. So that was my first guild slash raid leader position, and we got CE together. We were like two guilds that kind of meshed together. Ours died, and this other one was dying, and so we kind of came together. And halfway through HFC, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll take charge. Um, and you should see my Google Docs from back then and my paint. You know, all the nice tools that we have today, like the raid, the one thing where you can
Yeah,
put all the markers on, that didn't exist back then. So there's a lot of paint pictures
yeah.
that are something else. So a lot of detailed documents on mechanics and
Yeah,
strats and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. So Argus would be number two, and then my last end game boss. Oh, I'm just trying to think. Not 𝐿 𝐥𝐴den, not the other 𝐿 𝐥𝐴den. Hmm. This is a hard one.
Yeah, there's so many.
Maybe, maybe Garrosh.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think Garrosh. It was a fun fight.
yeah.
Long fight, but it was
Especially
fun.
on Mythic, the
Yeah, yeah, I think Garrosh. Yeah, it was a long fight, but it was pretty fun, and I did it on multiple characters.
yeah.
Um,
And, and
so
and also like talking about the impact of either it being your first cutting edge or your first time as a raid leader or killing like hard content, because 𝐒𝐚𝐿 from Hellfire Citadel will always stand out as one of my favorites because that was like
I
my
meant
my
Archimonde. Sorry, I
oh
meant Archimonde, not Argus. I got them
okay,
confused. Archimonde was the final boss in HFC, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. That's sorry. Archimonde.
yeah,
Yes, that's what I
because
meant.
yeah,
That's my
because
second.
Argus I thought that was because of the Legion thing, but okay.
No, yeah. So Archimonde was my first time as a guild leader.
Okay, because Archimonde, I love that fight. I love the secret phase. I love how it turned out and how you coordinated the lasers. There was so much good stuff going on. Like it wasn't too insane like it is today, but yeah. All right.
I had a thought that made me think the secret phase of Gul'dan, but that's not an expansion endgame boss, right? Are we thinking just expansion endgame or just like end boss of a raid?
A raid.
Oh, okay, because Gul'dan is probably
Yeah.
take the third spot.
Yeah, Gul'dan was also
Lich
so
King,
amazing.
Archimonde, Gul'dan.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of secret phases. I think secret phases are super fun. So those are my three. Yeah, Lich King, Archimonde.
And they're also hard to balance, right? So maybe that's why we don't see them too often.
Yeah, but now that the race, the world first, is all streamed, it's so fun for viewers.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Because you never know, and everyone's like, a secret phase, like, give us a secret phase, and it's just when the first guild to hit whatever percentages it is, and you're like, everyone's waiting with bated breath. Is it gonna happen? And then you see the secret phase, and it's like, wow! It's just huge thing. And, oh my god, it's so much fun when they break out the secret phase as a viewer.
Yeah. All right. So again, let's go back to the podcast because the time is actually running away from us. Normally we're only doing maybe 1.5 hours, and it's already been 1.5 hours. But I really want to.
I do only have until 11 o'clock. Sorry, just so you know. Sorry.
And what time is it now, Joe?
10:45, so 15 minutes.
Holy shit! Okay, so really quick, let's just do a rapid fire. And so the War Within coming up, and keep it short. The War Within coming up. What are your feeling, story and gameplay wise?
I'm so excited for both. I think the story is going in an incredible direction. For many expansions now, I have been hoping for a Void and Light expansion. I'm a big fan of the lore of the game, have been since the beginning. I love the stories. Obviously, Shadowlands was like, "What are you doing?" Or like, where is this going? What's happening?
Yeah.
Wasn't a huge fan of where that went. Dragonflight has felt like a reset of the story, of the direction of a lot of things. The War Within feels like they've taken that reset and now they've planted their feet and like this is where we're going, and I'm so excited for it. The idea that we've fought so many big bads out there, and the big bads we've fought are scared of this big bad, right?
Yeah.
Just the idea that this is the biggest of the bad, the Void, and I feel like what they're doing with the character of Xal'atath is they're channeling this evilness into her in such a fantastic character.
Yeah.
And the fact that this arc has been going on for a couple of expansions now, right? Like since Legion, I had a Shadow Priest, I had a white, Naifu, is that what everyone calls it? Xal'atath, when she would talk, Naifu, when she would talk to you, the Lewis Spring, stuff like that.
Exactly.
So, seeing how that has kind of come into this new story. Also, the whole world soul, that's something they've said from the beginning, that Azeroth is actually, potentially a Titan world soul and all this stuff. So it feels like a lot of storylines are now reaching a peak and a culmination, and I'm really excited to see where they go. Gameplay-wise, I think hero talents are going to be really cool. I think they open a lot of doors for what they're doing with the specs. So I'm really excited to see what they do with that, and I just think there's a lot. They're making a lot of good quality of life changes. So that's why I'm coming back to retail.
Yeah. Me too. So, and just having 3 expansion planned, and when they are saying after these 3, it's actually after the 3rd one, it's gonna be like, okay, the story is far from over. So yeah, I'm really excited. What about the upcoming Race to World First? You are covering this at your website. What about your overall thoughts on the upcoming race? I know we haven't seen too much. We have seen Liquid and 𝐒𝐿 battling it out. Method sneaking closer and closer because Peace is disbanded. A lot of players have jumped back and forth. What are your overall expectations for the first tier?
I feel like the first tier is going to feel pretty similar to 𝐒𝐚𝐟𝐞, where it's going to be Liquid and Echo, um, kind of at the forefront. I don't think Method's going to be very far behind. I don't think I don't expect them to be fighting for first alongside Team Liquid and Echo, but I expect them to be right behind.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like they will probably be starting the final boss close to when it gets killed. And I think they're going to do better than they did last year because they've one thing Method has been doing since they came back is they keep recruiting.
Yeah.
They're paying attention to what other guilds are doing, what other players are out there, and like it feels like every tier they're announcing new recruits.
They are. Yeah.
And so we're really excited to see what they can do with some new blood. So
And
I'm thinking they're going to do a little better than they did last time.
and they're still treating it like they are a competitor. They are doing the race to world first. They are doing a LAN event. They are doing a lot of stuff. They are like living like they are competing.
Yes.
So that's very nice at least. What is your take? I know it's like maybe an off topic here, but what are your take on the time difference in this race to world first?
Yes, the inevitable 16-hour difference talk.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a thing, but I think it's not as big a thing as people make it out to be. Because I think the team that starts the first does have a slight advantage, but I think the advantage is overstated a lot. Because they do get to deal with the bugs first. There's lots of fights that, Liquid goes into and they have to go. There's one fight I'm thinking of a specific raid. I think it was Antorus. Not Antorus. Sorry, they all blend at this point.
It's fine.
The last raid of Shadowlands, there was one boss that was super bugged. They actually had to get out of the raid while the devs fixed it. Took a few hours. They go back in,
Was
right?
it
So they
Hollandress or
lose.
something? I don't know.
No, not Halandris. It was a council type boss.
No,
Um,
it's fine.
yeah, it doesn't matter. But so they had to go out of the raid and go do like heroics or something for a few hours while it got fixed. So they lost some time there. And then there's of course the team that's behind gets to watch and learn from the team ahead. So I do still think the team ahead does have the larger advantage, but I think it's not as big an advantage as people seem to make it out to be, thinking that it's just a static. They get, X amount of hours and that's their advantage. Like, no,
Yeah.
there's factors that make that advantage not as significant. I would love to see the EU guilds come to NA servers, but then you've got ping issues, you've got all
Yeah.
that stuff, you've got time
There's
zones, they're
always
playing
like
weird times.
an
Yeah.
excuse, right? I think, to be honest, I think it would be so big balls of Liquid. Let's just say in the first tier, it's known to be a bit easier. Liquid coming up to the first boss, then or the last boss, they know 𝐒𝐿 is right behind them. Just stop and wait. And okay, 𝐒𝐿, you're here. 3, 2, 1. Now we go. Now we freaking race.
Yeah, that would be nice, but it would never happen.
Yeah, but still, that would be insane, right? Because once again, I don't know how the sponsorship are regarding monies, if
Yeah.
you win or whatever, right? But I know Blizzard don't give any money to the winners anyway. So, but that could be big balls of them. Just okay, we're waiting for you guys. You have like 5 hours, and then we start or something.
Yeah. That would be quite something, but yeah,
It
I
will.
don't see that ever happening. I don't think the sponsors would be super keen on them losing because they waited for 5 hours.
Well,
So.
but if they're good enough, they would win.
True.
So, but
True.
yeah. All right. So, what can we expect for this expansion from Radar.io? Any bigger changes or any events coming up?
More of the same. Like I said before, we're constantly innovating and working to improve on what we currently do. We're constantly coming up with new features. Like just this past expansion, we came out with the auto route creator and the mythic replay system. So like fans of Radar.io should just keep their eyes out for just new features constantly coming down the pipeline. Um, as far as events, we kind of have our two big ones that we're running these days, which is Break the Meta, that happens every season.
Mm?
So always keep your eyes out for that. That kind of usually happens near the end of a season once obviously a meta has been established. And then the Mythic Plus Charity Pro-Am, which we run once a year with Team Liquid. We don't know when that'll be in 2025, but there will be one in 2025, unless, something horrible happens. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that'll be the 5th Pro-Am.
All right. We will definitely be looking out for that as well. So let's round it out up here. So it has been such an interesting talk, and just looking back at our talk, we didn't really talk too much about World of Warcraft. Actually, it was more it was your route and Radar.io and like everything else. But you are just so compassionate about like everything you do. So you also like dragging people into your stories, and I really like that. We talked about safe places at the beginning, where you said in the early years your safe place might be when you were competing or with a book and just relaxing. What about now? Is gaming a place where you can actually relax, or has it changed?
Gaming became a safe space for me when I was a little older, and I know it's the same for a lot of people. It becomes an escape,
It does,
and
yeah.
it becomes an escape both in just to immerse yourself in a different world. One where I can shoot shadow bolts from my hands, right? Like that's an escape from reality, literally. But also one where I can find people like me who don't judge me, you know, who don't have to, people that I can just talk to about anything, um, without fear of reprisal, without fear of judgment,
Yeah,
and who I can just be myself with. I've always felt that gaming, when you find your people, right? When you find the right people, you can be your genuine self,
yeah,
in a
exactly.
way that sometimes you can't, in real life. You constantly have to mask, you constantly have to put on a face, in real life a lot of the time, and it's hard to find that genuineness, I guess. And to gaming has and continues to be that for me.
Yeah, and it is for a lot of people. So, um, all right, that was very nice to have a good talk with you. Long talk, but
Yes,
so interesting.
and
So,
no spiders.
yeah, no
Did I just
spiders. You're
jinx it?
still
I
alive.
might have just jinxed it. No, okay, it's here somewhere, but it will attack me later. I'm sure of it.
I hope not. All right. Any last words you want to share?
Just thank you for having me. It's always, fun to talk about, this incredibly long and convoluted path I've taken to where I am, but I love being a part of Radar.io. I love being a part of the Warcraft community and just meeting everyone throughout. I love being a part of the esports and the events and seeing the different ways that people come together. For everyone out there, the Race to World First is coming up, which is like one of the best events in all of gaming, as far as I'm concerned. I watch esports for other games as well, but the Race to World First is just something special and unique. So make sure you check it out. Make sure you check out Radar.io during the Race to World First, because we do amazing coverage 24/7, literally, coverage on what's happening. We keep you up to date. We have tools where you can analyze the different teams, what gear they're wearing, their best pulls and percentages. You can check out all that information. Stay informed, stay on top of what's going on. But other than that, for anyone out there who wants to work in the industry, wants to work in gaming, just go for it, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't need to go a certain path. There's no script to follow, obviously. Fighter pilot, there's no script. So just, if this is what you want to do, figure out what you want to do within the industry, because obviously there's so many different things. Figure out what makes you happy, what makes you passionate, what kind of role you want to do. Learn the tools and skills necessary for that role, and then just get out there. Message people on Discord, email people, say, I'm passionate about this. I want to make this happen. What do I need to do?
Yeah.
So give it a go.
And you are clear light at the end of this tunnel regarding follow your passion and your dream. And like you said at the beginning, dare to say no, dare to stop up, take a look at where you are. And I think that would be our closing remarks on this podcast.
Awesome.
All right. Once again, thank you
so
for joining, and yeah, I will catch you up during the Race to World first, and also just to follow the race in general. All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. So that was Hula from Radar.io, and that was such a long but also interesting talk. And I'm still amazed, like how her journey was, but also like how her journey as a young teenager, and you can still see the passion and the work that her parents actually put into her, and she's bringing that forward right now. And I hope that she has inspired some of you to actually stop up and see, okay, what do I actually need to do? What makes me happy? And maybe change direction, because it's not too late at all. This was in 2019 that she's talked to Radar.io, and now she's here. So don't stop believing in yourself or your dream at all. All right, the War Within is around the corner. I will wish you all good luck in the upcoming expansion, and hopefully you go into Radar and follow everything. That's it from the Safe Summit podcast, and thank you and good night.